Wow, even Fed Chair Jerome Powell had C19. Check this out.
Federal Reserve announcing that Fed Chair Jerome Powell has tested positive for COVID-19 and he's experiencing mild symptoms. He is working remotely from home, isolating himself. He is apparently, according to the Fed, up to date with COVID vaccines and boosters. Hard to imagine, assuming all goes well, Carl, that there'll be any impact on the upcoming meeting. He can either do it remotely if he has to, but I think he'd be beyond the normal sort of quarantine period by the time that end of January, February 1st meeting rolls around. But the Fed chair testing positive, mild symptoms, and working from home is the word from the Fed.
Now, what's this about China breeding a whole new C19? Well, sad to say, guys, but China, you know, where it all started, says that their current C19 outbreak has infected 80% of their population. It's got people worried about long C19 and their kids. Recent news also showed how 500,000 people missed out on heart drugs because of the first wave. Plus, questions over the safety with the mRNA C19 vaccines. No wonder Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is moving to permanently ban C19 mandates in his state. So what do you think, guys? Should we be following in the footsteps of Florida? And what do you think's coming down the pipeline? How would you feel about more lockdowns and another wave of C19 in 2023? Drop me a quick comment down below on that. Also, if you own a home, make sure your home is protected. Our homes, in most cases, are our largest asset. Make sure you're never caught off guard by another unexpected, very expensive home repair again. Get your free home warranty quote. There's a link in the description down below. All right, guys. So first, what's happening in China, right? Are they trying to breed another batch of C19 over there? Now, according to this, China says C19 outbreaks has infected 80% of their population. And this is after they eased their famously strict zero C19 restrictions and let their people actually move around. They were hoping for a big C19 rebound in the country, but what they got was a rebound of C19 cases. They just celebrated the Lunar Year, a pretty big holiday for them. And you know what that means? Mass movement. That could spread the pandemic and even boost infections in certain areas. Hundreds of millions of Chinese are traveling across the country for holiday reunions that have been suspended under recently eased C19 curbs, raising fears of fresh outbreaks in rural areas which are less equipped to manage large outbreaks. Right now, China has already passed the peak of C19 patients in fewer clinics, emergency rooms, and with critical conditions. But since January 12th, they've already counted 60,000 C19 deaths, just roughly 1 month after they undid all the strict C19 restrictions. That's only a couple of weeks, guys. Then consider the fact that the ruling party in China is famous for underreporting their numbers and that they're also excluding those who died at home. Their doctors are even discouraged from citing C19 as a cause of death. So, what's the real number, right? Now, all of this is reminiscent of how the pandemic blew up back in 2020. Nobody forgot that. You know, we were minding our own business. No one was paying any attention to China. They're so far away, you know. That's not going to affect us here. Then boom, before we knew it, things got out of hand and everything and everywhere just shut down. But let's hope that the government has a better handle on the situation this time around. This as new information about long C19 is coming to light, like this one. Potentially millions of US children have symptoms long after their initial infection. Children, even healthy teens, and the very young can have long C19. Several studies have found, and it can follow an infection that's severe or even mild. Then, of course, there are people who have adverse reactions to the vaccine. But here's a story I got from one of you guys. I was injured by the Moderna vaccine, and 16 months later, I am still struggling with the left-sided chest and arm pain, high blood pressure, and muscle twitching. Let me know if you guys have similar stories. It's time the truth came out to light. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit. But first, let's take a look at this information about the long C19 in kids. They told the story of Ileana, who's been going through this strange paralysis. So Ileana and the rest of her family had caught the C19 virus over the Christmas of 2020. Ileana's case was mild, but weeks after she recovered, she developed chest pain, heart palpitations, and lightheadedness. The test didn't show any problems, and a pediatric cardiologist pretty much gave her the all clear to go home. The temporary paralysis came later. It went away and then it returned. The medical team eventually determined that Ileana's chest pain and her elevated heart rate may have been related to inflammation due to C19 10 months before the trip to the hospital. Doctors officially diagnosed her with C19-related postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or POTS, a blood circulation disorder that causes an elevated heart rate when standing. Ileana has long C19, also called post-C19 or long-haul C19. Now, according to this, more than a quarter of the kids who get C19 may develop long-term symptoms. A 2021 study suggested that it may even be more. More than half of children between ages 6 and 16 in the study had at least one C19 symptom that lasted more than 4 months. So here are some symptoms to watch out for: fatigue, rash, stomach ache, headache, muscle ache, loss of smell and taste, circulation problems, trouble concentrating, and pain. Now, the vast majority of children recover, sometimes even faster than adults do, but in some cases, kids have more symptoms for months to come. Even worse, some adults think that the children are just making up their symptoms to get attention to be able to get out of school. Doctor after doctor after doctor is telling them that, they're just faking it or chalk it up to anxiety or whatever. But this is just sad. Many of these complaints that kids have, they're legit. But here's another bit of news that the government doesn't seem to be picking up on. 500,000 people missed out on heart drugs. Yep, during the pandemic, nearly 500,000 people in the United Kingdom missed out on starting medication to help prevent heart attacks and strokes. Now, we're taking a close look since the same is probably true for the United States. Now, it says here that some 491,000 people, 27,000 people a month, appear to have missed out on blood pressure pills, and 316,000 people did not get the treatment to lower their cholesterol. Now, apparently, during the pandemic, there was a reduction in diagnosis, monitoring, and treatment of high blood pressure, as well as other heart and circulatory related disease factors. Then there's the question about the safety of the new mRNA C19 vaccines. The FDA used results from mouse experiments and the original vaccine trials to reassure the public that the new boosters are safe. Is this evidence enough for you guys to want to put this in your arms? Well, it worked for the mice, right? So I guess it works for us? I don't know. Now, according to the latest evidence, the risks of C19 vaccines may be greater than previously reported. Using publicly available data from Pfizer and from Moderna studies, they found one serious adverse event for every 800 vaccines. Now, this comes directly from Pfizer and from Moderna. That translates to about 1,250 serious events for every million vaccine recipients. This is a big number compared to what the official report said, which is just about 1 or 2 per million. So yeah, maybe it's time we start speaking out against the lies that the government is cramming down our throats. Now, of course, it's hard not to get banned even if you're concerned about the safety of vaccines. They say that they're concerned about the vaccine take-up. I say we should be more concerned about who these vaccines are taking down, especially the vulnerable people like those on fixed income, Social Security, SSI, SSDI, SNAP benefits, you name it. Now let's compare that 1 in 800 risk to other vaccines in our history. So the 1976 swine flu vaccine was withdrawn after it was associated with Guillain-Barré syndrome at a rate of approximately 1 in 100,000. In 1999, the rotavirus vaccine, RotaShield, was withdrawn following reports of intussusception, or the part of the intestine slides into an adjacent part of the intestine, in about 1 or 2 in 10,000. Basically, the odds of C19 vaccine complication are much higher than these. But what makes the problem even worse is that Big Pharma, along with the FDA, is refusing to give the public the real numbers. Now, the question is Big Pharma, along with the FDA, refusing to give the public the real numbers? And how often individuals experienced multiple serious adverse events? Pfizer, Moderna, and the FDA have this data. But are they putting this out to the public? This information is essential to understanding of the balance between vaccine benefits and harms. Investors could argue that these are private companies, but C19 vaccines have cost taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. That rivals the annual U.S. federal expenditure on biomedical research. Now, I gotta say, I don't think that there's any legitimate reason why scientists and the public should not have access to the evidence that justify that purchase. So what's being held back here? Now, they may question the credibility of these people, but just take a look at the credentials. Robert M. Kaplan is an emeritus distinguished professor at UCLA Fielding School of Public Health and an adjunct professor of medicine at Stanford University's Clinical Excellence Research Center. He is an elected member of the National Academy of Medicine. Those sound like some pretty impressive credentials to me. Now, the other person in this study is Sander Greenland. They are emeritus professor of epidemiology and statistics at UCLA and fellow of the American Statistical Association and the Royal Statistical Society. The fact that censorship is so strong to the point that you can't even list actual research and data is appalling. I mean, am I right, guys? No wonder Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is gaining so many supporters in his anti-vaccine, anti-lockdown campaign. Have you guys heard about this? He recently announced a proposal to permanently ban C19 mandates in his state. Yes, the state of Florida. Now, in a press release, DeSantis said that the strong pro-freedom anti-mandate action will permanently protect Floridians from losing their jobs due to C-19 vaccine mandates, protect parents' rights, and institutes additional protections that prevent discrimination based on C-19 vaccine status, end quote. Now, look at this here. The proposal includes permanently banning mask requirements throughout the state, prohibiting mask and vaccine requirements in schools, prohibiting C-19 passports in the state, and prohibiting employers from hiring or firing based on C-19 vaccines, all in attempts to protect Floridians from the biomedical security state. By that, he means the Biden administration and the FDA allegedly trying to control the country with scare tactics and shots in people's arms. The proposal also aims to protect the medical freedom of speech by promising to protect medical professionals' freedom of speech, the right to disagree with the preferred narrative of the medical community, as well as the religious views of medical professionals. Ron DeSantis described Florida as a refuge of sanity serving strongly as freedom's linchpin, end quote. Florida Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo supported Ron DeSantis' proposal, saying, quote, "As a health sciences researcher and physician, I have personally witnessed accomplished scientists receive threats due to their unorthodox positions. However, many of these positions have proven to be correct, as we've all seen over the past few years. All medical professionals should be encouraged to engage in scientific discourse without fearing for their livelihoods or their careers," end quote. Nothing wrong with a little bit of free and open-minded debate, right? Now, it says here last year, they decided that Florida will formally recommend against C-19 vaccines for healthy children. Their Surgeon General Ladapo said this, quote, "We're kind of scraping at the bottom of the barrel, particularly with healthy kids in terms of actually being able to quantify with any accuracy and any confidence the even potential of benefit," end quote. This comes as questions are raised about the basis for the initial guidelines from the CDC and the FDA, that they just based it on mice and the original vaccine data, no trials for children or anything. They also petitioned the Florida Supreme Court to have a grand jury investigate whether Floridians were misled by C-19 vaccine manufacturers over the shot's potential side effects. The court granted Ron DeSantis' petition, and the grand jury will convene for a year before forming a decision. I'll be sure to let you guys know what goes on with that. Just always stay subscribed and keep that notification bell turned on. Lots of big updates coming out on this one. Well, there you go, guys. Another hot C-19 update in Daily News Report. China looking to breed a whole new batch of C-19 with the way their recent outbreak is spreading. Long C-19 being more serious than we thought, even in children, and questions about the safety of the C-19 vaccines. Did you guys get all that? Well, in case you didn't, feel free to rewind this video, watch it again. But as always, guys, appreciate you guys sticking around, and a big thanks for dropping a like for the video and for supporting these videos. More hard-hitting news coming your way in the next one. I'll see you guys there. Be kind to one another and be safe.